So Butch actually asked me to teach a little bit ago, but I kind of already have something I want to talk about. Um, I've been struggling a little bit with some anxiety and some depression and stuff, and this lesson kind of came to my mind a little bit ago, and I got a couple verses, but my first one's going to be Matthew 11:28 through 30, and it says, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And in my other Bible, this is my study Bible. It has like my words on the side, and it had a word study for the word yoke in it, and I wanted to read it. It says, "Yoke is not a word we hear very often, but in Jesus' day, those listening to his teaching would have known he was referring to a piece of equipment used by a farmer. The yoke was a wooden beam fastened over the necks of two animals, most often oxen, enabling them to work together to pull loads and plow fields. To better understand its use, to do a quick internet search to find an image of a yoke makes sense now. The yoke of Jesus is one of grace, mercy, love, and forgiveness. It is not based on what I can do, but what he has done. When we take Jesus' yoke upon us, we are saying, 'Your grace saved me a seat on the back of your bike. You are in the front seat of his bike, and I will pedal along with you, behind you, and I will follow you.' That means, sister, he picks the path, he determines the pace, and he will carry the weight of the journey." But the more I thought about it, which I do like what that says, but I don't think Jesus is behind us. I think he's like the oxen, and I think he's in front of us, and I think he's pulling most of the weight, and we're behind him as we go along. There's a lot of stuff that can pull us back as we try to press forward, and the yoke kind of settles upon us until we are no longer happy, and that's kind of like where the problem is. Sorry, let me go over here. Jesus tells us to take his yoke upon us, and he also says, "Come to me." And I think that's a lot of our problem sometimes too, is when we have problems, we go to everybody else and everything else except to Jesus. And I know it's easier said than done, but I mean, it says, "My yoke is easy, my burden is light." It doesn't mean that we're not going to face trials. It doesn't mean that we're not going to have anything wrong, but he carries most of that. We're not meant to carry the weight of everything that we face. And then my next verse is James 1, 2 through 7. It says, "My brethren, count it all joy when ye fall into diverse temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. But let patience have her perfect work, that ye may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask God, that giveth to all men liberally and upbraideth not, and it shall be given. But let him ask in faith, nothing wavering, for that he wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. For let not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Lord." So, and there's three, it don't really seem like they go together, but they kind of do. Because it says, "Count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations. Count it all joy when you go through trials." Count it all joy. I mean, there's sometimes, I've been going through some anxiety and stuff, and sometimes I don't count that all joy. My work's been stressing me out. It seems like everything's just been stressing me out lately, and everybody has doctor's appointments, and sometimes you get caught up in life, and it's hard to count it all joy. And, um, really, joy doesn't mean, I think in here, I don't think joy means as much happiness as it does in sometimes like trust as well. You know, um, I just think that when you're going through trials, um, you have to trust Jesus and be patient. Um, and then it says trials redefine us, make our faith stronger, and produce endurance. And then ask God for wisdom. He's generous and doesn't shame us for asking, which I kind of talked about that a little bit the last time I taught. And it says, when we take Jesus' yoke, we are not avoiding trials. We're learning endurance with him. And, it says, why is it sometimes hard to find joy in hardship? I mean, if you think about it, that's kind of like you would think a common sense answer, but it really shouldn't be. Like, why is it? Why do we have a hard time finding joy in hardship? And I think a lot of that's because the devil gets in our mind and he tells us that, sorry for what I was going to say. He tells us that we shouldn't have joy in these times, and we shouldn't trust Jesus in these times, and we shouldn't. And I'm not one to say that you can't blame the devil for everything that you go through. I'm a firm believer in that. Yes, he has some to do with it sometimes, but you can't blame the devil for every little thing that happens to you. If you stump your toe, you can't blame the devil for stumping your toe. I'm not saying that, but he does make it to where, when we face these trials, it is harder to lean on Jesus. And then how do we seek God's wisdom in the middle of suffering? And, like I said, I kind of talked about that a little bit last time that I taught, but I think the first thing you need to do is what I think Butch said the last time. You have to seek knowledge first and then seek wisdom. And then the last one I have is Hebrews 13 and 5 and 6. And it says, let your conversation be without covetousness, and be content with such things ye have. For he has said, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee, so that we may boldly say, the Lord is my helper, and I will not fear what men shall do unto me. And never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. We don't fear because God is near. I've seen that and I like that, because that kind of goes, the Lord is my helper, and so how I kind of connected these together was, it's talking about, in Matthew it was talking about rest, and then James 1 it's kind of talking about going in strength through your trials, and then in Hebrews it kind of talks about boldness, and it all comes from God, from knowing God is with us. So I think Matthew's kind of like the first step of it, where you're going through trials, and James is talking about count it all joy when you are going through trials, and then Hebrews is talking about the boldness that we have and the confidence that we have in God to get us through those trials. Anybody have any comments, concerns? Anybody want to talk to me? Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I have here, it says, how many of us quit because it is hard? How many of us just lay down and say, well, I'm going through this trial right now. I might as well just lay down and quit. You know, and I think if we're being honest, all of us have said that at one point. I mean, Martha's been dealing with her foot for a year or more. Yeah. And, you know, I mean, it'd be real easy for Martha just to lay down and say, you know, I'm done. This is ridiculous. I'm done dealing with it. I don't want to do it no more. You know, and then I have you ever lost confidence in Jesus? And I think everybody could say yes at some point. Should we? No. But we do. I mean, something's happened, and I guarantee you've lost your confidence in God to do what he says he's going to do. I mean, it's the flesh in us, it's human in us, and it's going to be real easy to do. And I have, if you need wisdom, ask Jesus. He will not rebuke you. And we struggle with people. What opportunities can we do to tell people about Jesus? If your faith is tested, is when it grows. So sometimes I think if we would pay attention to our trials, those are the ways that we can share Jesus with people the most. Because we're going through something. And I guarantee you there's someone going through the same thing that you're going through, or the same things that you have been through. And I think if you're listening to God in those times of trials and those times of struggles, I feel like that's a perfect opportunity to go to someone who's going the same thing with you, and you're like, hey, you know, God's helping me through this. It's not fixed, but come with me and do it with me. You know. So I think, and this is kind of off topic with my lesson, but I was listening to someone not long ago, and they had said, I've received my inheritance, but what am I doing to help other people receive theirs? He said, am I taking my inheritance and just leaving it with me, or am I sharing it with other people? And that really got me thinking a lot, because I'm going to be honest, I don't share Jesus like I should. I mean, yeah, people work now I'm a Christian. They know, you know, they know. I mean, I talk about church, I talk about it, but, you know, I'm with a girl in my office every single day. She used to go to church, she don't know more. But why am I not, you know, inviting her to church? Why am I not telling her, you know, about what God has done for me? You know, why am I not doing that? So, I know it's kind of off topic of my thing a little bit, but I just happen to think about that. I like that. But I just want, you know, everybody to know that we all go through trials. We all go through really hard stuff, but we're going to. We're not going to go through trials. I can tell you that, bless you. But you just have to let Jesus be the oxen, and you're kind of the plow pulling along. You have to let him carry that weight, because if he doesn't, you're going to drive yourself crazy. And I know, because I've drove myself crazy thinking I can fix it by myself. But I can't fix it by myself. I try, but I need God to fix it for me. So, anybody else have anything? That's all. Yeah. No, go ahead. 9 and 10. And he said unto me, my grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, I will rather in glory in my infirmities, pleasure in the infirmities, in reproaches, in necessities, in persecutions, in distress, for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong. I like that. You know, it's hard when we're going through stuff. It really is. And, you know, I think in some ways, and I think you might learn this a little bit, once you accept God, your life gets harder. To some extent, because you have the devil pressing on you more. And again, I'm not going to say that everything that happens to you is the devil's fault. It's not. I don't like when people go around blaming the devil for everything that happens in their life. Sometimes you are the reason stuff happens in your life. You are the barrier. You are the reason that stuff happens to you. It's the flesh inside of you. Yes, it's your choices. But, I think sometimes when you accept, because we have the world to deal with. We have, stuff that tries to separate us from God. We have, in marriages, we have people, and things that the devil uses to try to separate you from each other, and it's hard. And I think in some extent the devil knows if you're trying, and he's going to use that to press even harder against you. So, but I've learned that I just have to pray through it, and I've been doing the Bible thing that Melissa gave us. I think I've missed maybe a few days, but I've read about every day, and I've learned a lot. I have, and I've enjoyed it. But I've learned that's the best thing I can do is read my Bible and pray, and I do it every day. I miss some days. I'm not gonna say I do it every day, but I try. I do my best to do it every day. I do it a lot before I go into work in the mornings and stuff. But I just want you guys to know that if you're going through trials, and if you're going through something similar to what I've been going through lately, it's, that God's with you, and you just have to let him pull that weight. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, and I hesitate to say that because I don't think God wants you to do nothing. Like, I don't think, and whenever he talks about rest, it's inactivity. I don't think that. I think he's talking more of like complete peace, spiritually, emotional peace, but not that you're stopping, you're still trying, but you let him take that away from you, Yeah. I don't think he means to just sit there and let him do it all and do nothing. So. Mm-hmm. Yep. 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 And we do. Yep. Mhm. Yep. Yeah. Yep. And he knows. He knows when you're struggling. He knows when, you're going through it. He knows when work's stressing you out. He knows when relationships are stressing you out. And that's when he uses it against you. But that's where I think last time I talked, Melissa talked about, staying prayed up. That's when you stay prayed up. And that's when you don't let the devil enter your house, your marriage, your relationship with your kids. You don't let the devil enter that, because that's when he penetrates it. So if he can't get in, he can't penetrate anything.
I heard another quote that you can't be anxious and grateful at the same time. So if you're super anxious, just kind of stop and think of what I have that is so good in my life, and then it does help you kind of come out of that anxious, depressed kind of state. Maybe even if it's just for a minute,
Mm-hmm.
coming out of that feeling of anxiety and worry, and I think we need to kind of live for today, because I know we always worry about tomorrow. What am I going to do tomorrow? What am I going to do next week? I'm going to make this plan for everything,
Mm-hmm.
You do get the plan, but I feel like you have to remember that today is the present, the gift that God gave us.
Yeah.
And that he will take care of us today. Tomorrow is tomorrow. Today he will take care of us.
Yeah. And it's hard as, a wife and stuff, and a mother, it feels like sometimes I think everybody just needs something from you. And then, you got work and kids and husband and food and, everything else you're trying to do. It feels like everybody's just like,
Yeah.
and sometimes you're just like, I want 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But, it's life. And I wouldn't trade my life for anything. So it is. I'm not going to say it ain't hard, but I love it.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything? Are you pointing to the ceiling, Jeff? Are you pointing to Jesus? Okay, well, I know it's kind of short today. So sorry. I just wanted to, I don't know, I needed that. So You know, if nothing else, it was just for me, because
I needed it too.
it was something I needed, because I've really been struggling lately, and I'm trying my best. So
Everybody's having anxiety right now. It just seems like that time of year, kids going back to school, it's that time of year, weather's changing. It's just anxiety ridden time.
yeah,
Sometimes you have to say it out loud.
it does. Yeah.
Incredibly pain what your issue is.
Yeah, it's hard to stay positive all the time, and I try to always look to the good, no
Yeah.
matter what, because I'm thankful for everything I have. So it hits me when, I have to deal with things that are out of my control.
Yes.
And it, like, say for instance, like one of his, I know his people like his face person, but when he's in the mood and he says one, he's like, I get aggravated now. I mean,
Mhm.
99% of the time I can ignore it. 99% of the time I ignore it. But this morning he started, and I feel bad that I did it, but I said, not today. Today is not your day, today is my day, and I'm not having it today.
Yes.
So whenever I come home, you better be in a better
It
mood.
drags me, sir.
Yeah, you need to check in and check me out, but that got me in an attitude, so I'm like, okay now, Donna,
You carry that with you too.
yeah, and I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I love him, I know he's been through a lot, but I have too, I've been in this journey right
Right
beside
there
him.
with him.
And I'm aggravated because I'm like,
Trying.
yeah.
Well, praise be, I mean, you've been here this year.
But that's just how I
Is
feel.
everybody's having a tough morning?
Yeah, and now he's really having a tough morning because what I said to him.
Right.
I know he's struggling with that, so I'm here at church and I know he's at home struggling with that, like, what did you do?
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, I'm just not in the mood to be around that today, and I'm not going to be around it today, and I just nipped it in the bud.
Yeah. Now it's still here with you though.
Yeah,
It's
and I
still-
don't want it to be here with me, I'm not that person, that's not who I am.
Yeah.
And it bothers me that I had to do that.
Yeah.
And
Does that make sense?
sometimes someone else's negativity brings you down,
Oh, yeah.
you know, and puts you in a place where you don't need to be.
And that's, I
You
don't
know.
want to be that.
Yeah.
I don't.
And it's everywhere. I mean, you know, a lot of people, I mean, are just hateful and have cold hearts and are, you know, just so negative anymore. And it's everywhere you go, and sometimes it just weighs down on you, you know.
Yeah, and everything might be everywhere I go.
Yeah. Yep.
Misery loves company.
Yep.
So I ain't having me here tonight.
Right. And I want happiness and peace and joy, yeah.
Yeah, and I want to talk with that.
Yeah.
You can't let people ruin your peace. But, and, you know, I think to that certain extent, again, that kind of, it's like you said, you just kind of stopped it. You know, you can't let people do that. You can't let people ruin your peace. You have to say, you know,
You have to stand up for
I
yourself.
love that for you, and I'm going to pray for you, but I'm going to walk away from that for right now. You know, and we'll come back to that later. Because I'm going to go worship Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can leave your negativity here. And
And he'll tell me he's sorry, I know he's sorry, and I'm sorry, but he's struggling with that. He's struggling with depression, he's struggling with the whole thing. And I feel his pain, and I've been praying, and I understand that, and I want to continue to pray, but
Strokes can change your personality
yeah.
too though, right?
Yes, yes, and I don't want to lose my good.
Right.
I don't believe he will know that, but
It's gotta come to a different
Right.
situation. But you don't wanna be constantly,
shut it down.
yeah.
And I'm not.
that weighs on you. When you're drugged down all the time, it weighs on you real heavy. It does.
I'll put it up and it's and it's hard to do that.
Yeah.
It's really hard to do that.
Well, especially sometimes whenever I don't think people realize that they have the attitude that they have, you know, and I think that makes it harder. when, like, they're not self-aware of it, too.
Like, yeah, and every day that's hard in your own home.
It is.
Your home is supposed to be,
Your safe place.
yeah, you can go there and be safe and peaceful in your home,
Yeah. And it's
That
hard,
makes it hard.
you know, when you get to a point where you just don't want to go home.
Yeah.
You know,
That's what,
it ruins your peace.
But, you know, like I leave town, that's my house. That the Lord is in my house. This is my area. I'm not giving that my area. This is mine.
yeah.
I'm not taking it.
You just have to keep praying for him and ask him to pray too.
Oh,
He doesn't come.
He does, but I'm claiming, I will not surrender.
Right.
I'm not gonna give up. I will never give up.
No.
I'm gonna fight that battle.
So it's time to go home.
There was one time I was by myself, and, you know, I'd had it, and I opened all my doors, and I took my Bible out, and I took some oil, and I anointed all the doors in my house, and I told the devil, I said, get out of my house, I'm done.
Yeah.
I want you out of my house. Like, I'm done with this mess, I'm not impressed with what they're doing, I'm done.
I'm scared to death of it. I wouldn't-
Because I get tired of it, and
Sometimes I'll start rebuking it, you know.
I'm not dealing with it.
Right.
I'm not letting the devil steal my joy, I'm not letting the devil steal my family, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
So,
Confusion and anger is part of the devil. You have to get it out of your
Yeah.
house.
yep,
I ain't gonna have it.
Yeah.
yep. Get out of my house, it's not gonna happen, sir.